Welcome everybody to episode 4 of New Waylie. Today we will be finishing the path around this part of the park that we're looking at here. There's really no need to see a lot of that, but there will be some tricky little parts that I think are worth showing. But for the most part, yeah, we're gonna see a lot of things sped up, actually like up to 100 times. So yeah, let's get to it. So first I started looking at this area because this is the junction with the sort of the input, I guess you could say, the input pedestrian path, which comes from the train station. If you remember the last stream, it goes around the oval road, which you can kind of see just right there at the top. And I wanted the brick path to start late like this. And when we see it zoomed out, I just decided that it's going to be a transition point somewhere. And I figured that the best look was to have this fork here because, I don't know, I just kind of had the idea, like, it makes a little more sense, kind of like the stem of a strawberry or something, you know, a fruit. And so the brick is the quote-unquote fruit here. Might as well start that late. And I figured that made the nicest transition. I mean, I guess technically I could have just tried to make a transition point right at the corner itself. But I don't know, I just kind of felt like that would be a little bit too divisive of the two areas, and just better to have this kind of stem instead. And, you know, it would give me a little opportunity to have some decoration of the entrance here. So, like right now, there's definitely going to be some of that brick path under the walkway that comes in. But, you know, I'll also be able to fill up that space with maybe an extra wall, some bushes, things like that. Now, here's the other corner that, again, I really realized I hate doing. But, you know, just using these round pieces kind of worked. For most people, this is actually very easy. It's just that I'm using this patterned brick, so things kind of have to match in a way that makes sense. So that's actually the biggest issue for me. But once that's done, another curved area, actually. So for this, I decided I needed to try a different strategy. First of all, I gotta lower this path, which is just my guideline. I'm using the ratings as a guideline. But what I decided to do to make the curve is to do triangles. Now, I'm not really sure if it's the most efficient way, but I just figured that this is how I see polygon meshes are usually made, you know, when in 3D modeling. And I just in general, I've always heard that, I mean, not just heard, but I kind of know, I guess, like mathematically and stuff, like triangles can just be very efficient shape, you know, for filling up spaces and stuff. And that's, I guess that's partly why they're used so much in modeling after all. So that's what I decided to do. I thought about not using the path as a guide right here and just kind of doing it on my own. But I soon realized that no, like I'm not going to be able to eyeball a curve here, really. I do decide to use it as a guideline because I'm like way off here. And I really did like the curve that I had set out, so I might as well complete it. I think I considered just adding the concrete retaining wall there and use that instead, but I figured I'll save it for later. Now, I will say, though, that as you saw at the very beginning, aligning the sharp tip of the triangle with what I had already done before felt a little difficult, a little clunky. So I think next time I won't actually use triangles and I'll use trapezoids instead, so I can widen that tip a little bit, you know, and not have to worry about pixel perfect precision on that tip. And now I'm just adding the curb around the whole thing just to give it a little border, but also give me a little leeway, you know, so that the edges don't have to be super perfect. And after that, it's pretty much done. All I have to do now is I just plopped these props right there. I was just checking the height of the curb in relation to the wheels, just to make sure it kind of made sense as something you could step over. Now this is actually the next stream, although I cut a lot of it out because I was mostly experimenting with some stuff. And all I'm doing here is just setting these planters down. I wanted some grass inside. In retrospect, though, I shouldn't have used these because they are planters, so it's meant for plants and stuff to go on there, and you just kind of have this little greenish texture under it for, you know, whatever you can see through the branches. And because of that, you know, this isn't really the best grass texture. I figured it was still okay. It kind of looks like a golf course green or like a putting green, so it's not too bad. But still, definitely not the nicest texture. Here I'm just briefly showing something that I think I'll touch on a little bit, just a little bit later. First, I want to just point out that you see me messing around with these right now so that the curb, sort of like the edge of the planter, stays hidden. And I think I had added another layer on top of that top rectangle that I'm working on right now to cover up some of it. But that's pretty much it. The road thing I was looking up in the workshop was because I realized that a lot of what I'm doing here I won't have to do soon, in the sense that I initially wanted to use some decals for this path, but you need a surface for the decals, and I'm here at elevation using ploppable surfaces, so the decals weren't going to work. So I had to use these instead that I can just place anywhere. But as we saw in the workshop there are now pretty much featureless roads and pathways, like pedestrian paths. So I plan to use those later on with decals, because I can elevate those and you won't see pillars, you won't see railings, and I'll be able to just start using any decal I want at an elevated level. But right now, it's time for a third stream where we begin detailing the park. So first we start with this sculpture I found, which I believe is a vanilla asset, maybe from campuses, maybe like a trade school sculpture or something like that. And when you turn it into a PO, everything around it just gets removed and you're left with only this sculpture and base. So it was perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. This would be the key attraction in the park, the centerpiece of the main gathering area of the park. Now I decided to start checking out what kind of props I could put around here, have those round brick planters, but I decided to focus on some plants or little fountains around the sculpture itself, just really decorate this sculpture, because I didn't think it was good enough by itself. I am, however, working at quite a small scale here, so getting these little props lined up was pretty tricky, because even with really precise mouse movements, it's just such a small scale that I felt like I guess that kind of sounds weird, but you'd think at a small scale the precision wouldn't matter, but I actually felt like it was more difficult. Not really sure why now that I think back at it. Found some benches I thought were awesome, kind of fit the same color scheme here. So all of this kind of feels like a very stone-oriented center, right? So the fountains, the pots, the platform, and then these benches would all be probably stone or something. So I needed something to fill in the gap though, so I found this little curb piece. Pretty sure it's meant to be like a street curb. But I used procedural objects to stretch it out and deform it as needed to make it fit back there. And I probably couldn't see it because it was too fast, but I actually had it a little lower than the main platform there, so that it also served as a step up. So it actually worked really nicely there. Now, remember I said, if you saw episode 2, that it was not going to be the only time I would use roof networks as a floor network. Well, that's what I'm doing right here. These are Onyx's roof networks. They're meant to be, I guess, like roof tiles or whatever. And you can see the nodes are a little odd because they're not really meant to be, I guess, used this way. But I really like them. I think they look like, they look like wood floors or something. And I thought it would be perfect for this area. So another, not really a centerpiece, but like another point of attraction at the other end of the park, I put that statue. And I'm not really sure why, probably just because the idea came to me. I decided it's time to start putting some lights here, just starting to get an idea where the lights could go. And speaking of lights, I wanted something special for the entry point into the park. And I thought about Stargates. Why not? Stargates. Now, I decided to leave them functional as buildings, because I didn't think they would light up if they were, turned into procedural objects or something. Later I found out that buildings turned to procedural objects do still light up, so I might have to revisit this and see if this is actually necessary or not, because it's definitely bringing up the terrain under it, which I can clip through. I can cover that up somehow, but I'll have to rethink it later and see how I really want this to be. Trying to come up with some interesting geometry at the end. I realized that the curbs of the planters, something I could use creatively to give me a little something to do and conform in an interesting way to the tip of this park. And I had some bushes there, but I did later think, of course, that I'm using way too many vanilla trees and bushes, so I did keep it in mind that I was most likely going to replace all those later on, and these are mostly here to just start getting a layout feel for the layout of this place. some other plants here and benches, as I do want this to really look like a park, a place where you can just sit down and relax, enjoy the scenery, whether it's beyond the edge of the park and see the mountain and the sea and all that, or even just to enjoy the local scenery, you know, the trees and plans and layout of the park itself. Now, since I did say that this side of the park specifically would be more like a big gathering place, I thought about having a little kind of stage. So I used another kind of planner and just deformed it to make it stage-like. Although I did later realize that I kind of feel like it's facing the wrong way when you think about how stages are. You usually see them as more longer horizontally to your perspective. So that's something I would modify later. And now I'm just finishing up the area, just putting a few more trees and planters, lining that up. And realizing that my layout was pretty much done, I started just kind of quickly prototyping the beginnings of the second level. For a long time, I was planning on adding a second level to this. And so this is what this is. I know I'm going to have some glass, so put that in the middle there. And maybe some sort of stairs up toward it. And next time, I would start building that second level. After all, this is a futuristic city, and I want to have a lot of multi-level things. And that does it for this episode of New Waylie. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in next episode where we finish up a little bit more detailing on the first level and begin building our second level. Wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.